Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Like Charlotte Caffey looking incredibly awkward in the Go-Go's music video for Head Over Hills, this is the Discriminating Gamer. Say, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Dominant Species Marine from GMT Games. In Dominant Species Marine from GMT Games, 2 to 4 players take on the roles of various evolutionary species as they attempt to gain the most victory points and dominate the Earth. The game board is a grid map of the Earth. Essentially, you have spaces for land tiles and water tiles. There'll also be vents that will pop up, and all sorts of different terrain features will encompass those tiles. You will also have a space for element pawns, and you will also have a space for kind of the various actions you and your friends will take during the game. There will also be kind of a turn order phase that you'll see printed on the board as well. On the left side of the board, there'll be spots for 5 evolution cards, which will come out in the game, and around the periphery of the game board is a point track. At the beginning of the game, players are going to choose one of the 4 species they will evolve from. They will either be the cephalopods, the crustaceans, the reptiles, or the fish. Players will also select a specific trait card. This will give them a unique advantage and asymmetrical advantage throughout the game. Now, at the beginning of each of these kind of player mats that each player will have, depending on their species, there will be kind of a set number of elements that will help them, and there will be spaces, empty spaces, to be able to gain more of those kinds of elements. Now, throughout the game board, you're going to have the different tiles, and on the corners of the tiles, you'll have different elements that will eventually pop up. The first tile, the center, has all of them, and then as the game progresses, you're going to place more out there. Now, typically, you want your species to be in a tile that has at least one of those matching elements on your player sheet on there. If that is the case, then you are thriving. If you don't have one there, then you are endangered. Now, as I say, the turn order is in the corner of the board in the what is called the food chain. So you can see exactly which of the 4 species animals goes first, and there's also some other information that will come in handy as a result of that table. Now, essentially, on a player's turn, what they're going to do is either place one of their pawns on the actions, or they can retrieve all of their actions from the board and start again. Now, how this works is you've got this, the action table is, kind of a vertical set of actions, and each of them has different actions along them. So what you can do is you can place on any action you want to place, but the further down you go and the further to the right you go means you can't go further to the left or above any of those and do any of those previous actions. You can only go to the right and down. So you have to be very judicious and very careful and plan your turns, because as you do that, you may box yourself into a corner. So it's not the best idea to get some of those kind of lower actions, which are more powerful, first. You got to kind of build up to them. Now, as I say, you're going to have your basic pawns, which can go in the basic places, but you may also get one of the special element pawns that will allow you to place in other places and take other actions that otherwise would let you break the rules, but here they give you really unique advantages. Now, there are several different actions, including Abundance. Abundance lets you take an element from that section and place it anywhere in one of the corners on the game board. The Autotrophs action space let you manipulate the vents by placing or removing elements from those tiles. The depletion section will have a number of elements in a box there. You can go ahead and actually remove any element on the game board that matches one of those elements in the box, and you put it back in a draw bag. You can do adaptation, which essentially lets you put one of the elements in the adaptation on your player board so that now you can actually thrive with that element as well. You can do a regression action, which allows you to put a cube on the spot there, which will help you during the reseed action. You can do speciesization, which essentially allows you to place more of your cubes, which are your animals, on the board. You can place them on the board on various numbers depending on what the specific terrain type is. Wanderlust actually lets you take terrain tiles and put more terrain tiles on the board, and depending on where you place them, you're going to get bonus points for that as well. Tectonics is going to allow you again to manipulate the vents, and you're also going to be able to put some of your species out on the board. Migration will allow you to move a certain number of your animals, your cubes, on the board to different areas. Competition essentially will allow you to remove other people's species from the board in places where you have the species as well, depending on a few factors. Now, evolution is going to be one of the most important actions you can take because it's going to let you score tiles. Depending on who has the most species on a tile, you can score the highest number, the second will get some, third will get some, depending on how many point value numbers are on that specific tile. But then you can also draw and resolve one of the 5 evolution cards, which is going to give you, generally speaking, some pretty good advantages and will hopefully maybe not do very good things to your enemies. Once you do that, of course, you draw a new evolution card and you slide the others down. Now, when you're drawing that evolution card, though, depending on the slot you are, the numbered slot you are in the evolution action section, you can only draw that numbered card and below. So you've got to be careful where you place that so you can have your pick of which card you want to draw. Now you can do a domination action. If you dominate an area where one of the elements that you're associated with exists, you can go ahead and take that special element pawn that gives you the special pawn to use until it is taken away from you. You're also going to go ahead and move that specific pawn up the track until it matches what the domination value is, and then that's going to make that a little bit more difficult to get later on in the game. Now, what's to say, once all your pawns are placed, or even before if you want, you can retrieve all of your pawns and put them back on your own player board. Now, every time you do retrieve your markers, you actually move your cube next to your animal in the food chain over. Once they're all over, once all 4 players or however many players you have slid them over, then you go ahead and you trigger a reseed event. Now, during a reseed event, you're going to go ahead and essentially draw more tokens from the draw bags. You're going to place them on the various action spots, and you're going to go ahead and do a few other bit of housekeeping rules and then reset all of those cubes back to the first part of the food chain track. Now, essentially, you're playing through that evolution deck, and toward the end of the evolution deck, you'll reveal the asteroid card. When you reveal the asteroid card, this triggers the end game. So then you finish the remainder of the round, you trigger a few more events, you score every tile one last time, and then whoever has the most points wins. Dominant species, Marine. So I'm just giving you the bare bones of the game. There's a ton more going on here. These are just the very basic rules I'm giving you. But there is a ton more going on here. I had never played the original Dominant Species. It's one I'd heard about. I'd heard a lot of good things about. And it's kind of one of those games I kind of felt I should play, but I was never really eager to because, to be perfectly blunt, the theme didn't really thrill me. Kind of the evolution of dinosaurs and stuff. Typically science games like this, I'm not real quick to jump on. I played a few, and they never thrill me. I played one a couple of years ago that was just awful, and that kind of confirmed my feelings about it. So this theme is not a theme I'm a huge fan of. But GMT went ahead, they sent me this game, and I go, well, I'll try it. Now, I was kind of intrigued because I saw that the designer was Chad Jensen, who had designed the Combat Commander game, which I really enjoyed quite a bit, and tragically, I think he passed away a year or two ago. But he, prolific designer, a very good designer, certainly with the Combat Commander series. So I saw that, and I kind of got a little more excited to try this game. So my friends and I, we sat down and we played it. And, it's a little, going into it and not quite knowing what to expect, it was a little, it seemed like with the setup, it just seemed like it was going into it, it was a little more complicated than it needed to be. But gradually things, as they very often do, began to make more sense, and we were kind of, before too long, playing it through pretty smoothly. And there's some really interesting things here in this game. For instance, I really like that tension of you've got the 4 pawns, maybe more if you've got the elements, but you got the 4 pawns, and you can only place them you can't go backward. You can only place them forward, which means you can take really powerful actions up front when you can't really exploit them, or you can build to them and risk somebody else getting to the powerful ones first, right? Gain those evolution cards first. And so it's a very interesting dynamic, and it's a very interesting tension, and that was really intriguing. I really enjoyed that quite a bit. Also, too, some of the other concepts were fun. I did like the trait cards, how they gave everybody kind of a unique advantage right off the game, and then the evolution cards are actually a lot of fun. They kind of throw the monkey wrenches into people's plans. It's kind of the spice and sugar of the game. Like I said, there's also events that trigger survival and extinction events that'll trigger that you got to resolve. That can be pretty interesting. But this is a worker placement game. Essentially, it's a basic worker placement game mechanically. Now, as far as the theme goes, my friends were their position was they didn't feel like the theme was all that strong. I did. I got a sense of evolution and stuff out of this game. So in that sense, I thought it worked. All told, I think the game was not for me overly compelling because, again, of the theme. I was not a huge fan of the theme. And so it didn't draw me in like maybe it could have if it was another theme. But also, too, I felt the game went on just a little bit too long. We were playing 4-player, and maybe that's not an issue with a lower player count, but I kind of felt like it was just a little much. Not a lot, but enough that I noted it, enough that I thought about it. So anyway, that was something that really kind of was I wasn't wild about. But all told, I think it's a fun game. I think it's a generally a good game. I think if you're somebody who really likes this theme, you will absolutely eat it up. I think it's a well-constructed game. I think there's a lot of thought here, and there's the puzzle there that people will be attracted to. But it's not one that I think I'm going to be reaching for a lot. If somebody said you want to play it, I'd play it, and I'd probably have fun with it. But I don't know how often this is one I'm going to suggest to my play group. So, recommendation of the discriminating gamer is try it before you buy it. If you like the theme, if you like a good worker placement and kind of a Euro-y theme there, I think you'll get a kick out of it. If you're like me and those things are really not the highest priority, you can still appreciate it for some of the things it does very well, but it may not be for you. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We'd ask you, ladies and gentlemen, also to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD. We talk about military history and fun topics like that. Please subscribe to that channel. And I'd also ask you to please give us a thumb on Board Game Geek if you've liked this video. Ladies and gentlemen, I mentioned the Go-Go's earlier. Have you heard Kathy Valentine's original version of the song Vacation? Because she did that with the text tones before the Go-Go's, and it's more of a punk beat. I think you'll want to check that out. It's a little tip from your Uncle Cody.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Cover it with chocolate and a miracle or two.